the Truth, Money, and Freedom podcast.
Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Monday, the 31st of August, 2020. Hey, gang. Been away for a while again. Sorry about that. This time I was out of state. Was gone for, I believe it was 9 days. And my wife's brother had passed away. And I'm going to take a little bit of a departure from the normal subjects we cover with Truth, Money, and Freedom to talk a little bit about this. As you see on the screen here, living will, and I even have, executive or executor templates and things of that nature, because I want to talk to you about what we're going through. Because her brother, even though he was in very poor health, he was 63 years old, much older brother, he didn't plan, for this. Even though he knew it was coming, he had a massive, very damaging heart attack last summer. And the fact that he walked away from that was a miracle in itself. And little did he know, he only had a year and a month to live from that heart attack. He had another massive heart attack along with a stroke this time. And despite valiant efforts made by people in the medical community in two different hospitals, and he had a helicopter flight between the two as well, they absolutely could not save his life. Well, and by the way, I'd love to talk about the man. He was a great man. He was a great man, but he did forget to do some things, and I want to talk about that because these things are things we all need to think about. Doesn't matter what age we are. We never know when today's our last day. No one knows. So what he left behind, despite the fact he was a great man, and I do mean he was a great man, evidenced by, the sheer outpouring from the community where he lived in Minnesota. It was overwhelming, actually. And he was very much loved. He was, I don't know, I need to stop with that part. What he forgot to do was anything having to do with his death. So what does that mean? He didn't have anyone listed on his bank accounts. He didn't have anyone listed on his property. And that includes titles for vehicles and trailers, and he had a lot of vehicles and trailers. There's reasons why, but he made money with them. And he, the checking accounts and the savings accounts, no one's name on them. So that makes it impossible to pull the money out. And basically, my wife and I had to go ahead and pay for his final arrangements, which we had to guess based on conversations over the last 20 years, because he had nothing down on paper. And these were loose conversations, not intense conversations, with family members about what, he would want, So it kind of put us in a spot. And we did the very best we could with the knowledge we had to follow his wishes. So, which was, basically, a funeral, a wake, a funeral, casket, burial plot, where we think he wanted it, based on a conversation he had with my wife some 12 or 14 years previous. But once again, nothing in writing, and I mean nothing in writing. All of his life insurance had expired for different reasons. He had a lot of small policies, and they all expired for one reason or another, or were not useful for one reason or another. And so there was no life insurance. He had a tiny bit of cash in his wallet and had a little bit of cash in his house, but it was just a little bit. And all of his wealth, which he is considerable, is stored in equipment and in the bank account, which we can't access. So I don't want to go on about that part of it. I just want to let you guys know that think about these things. There's many things you can do. For instance, a living will. He did have that. It was forced upon him in the hospital last year when he had his heart attack. And he didn't want to do it, but the hospital kind of forced him into doing it. So he didn't like thinking about these kinds of things. Who does, really? But it's important to have these things so that your family knows whether or not to revive you. You know, they know where you want your stuff to go, who you want to will things to. Get, a family member, on a checking account or a savings account, and that way if something does happen to you, that money doesn't end up in probate and then the government coming in to take their pound of flesh out of every piece of property you have, out of all your vehicles, out of your land, out of your home, out of your checking account. These things are pretty easy to do. Living will, followed by an executor for your estate, and then also making sure that you have family members or other significant others, basically on titles. So that means like a title for your car, and like for instance, the title for my car, I have it in a tiny safe, and so it's signed. It's now signed. And that way, if something should happen to me, actually my wife's name was already on it, but if something happens to the both of us, it's signed. So it's like a blank check that's been signed. Someone can literally take it down to the Department of Records and pay for a small fee for a title transfer, and then they can take the vehicle, rather than it going through probate, which can take a long, long time. And guys, I guess I can't put too fine a point on it. When I was driving back from Minnesota, I got on our Discord chat and was talking to people about it, and it was clear that most people are in the same position that my wife's brother Dennis was in, which is they've not done any planning whatsoever and they have nothing down on paper. So verbal telling people some of them had done, that's not enough. You got to put it on paper, gang. So everyone knows exactly what your wishes are. Everything from whether or not to revive you to what to do with your stuff, and get names on, if you have kids, make sure your kids' names, basically on your checking account. Certainly not if they're, 6 years old. Put your parents' name on your checking account then. And that way if something happens to you, they can easily get to your money to take care of you. And another thing is, and this is the one part that I really wanted to talk about, is paying for your final wishes. What are your final wishes? How will they be paid for? Well, in the case of Dennis, we're going to have to sell stuff to get paid back for his final wishes, which we had to piece together based on conversations that were over a decade old. And so we hope we did the right thing. It's all we had to go on. And but there's two ways you can do it. And that's life insurance policy, or pay for a policy in advance, and then a new one that I just thought of, save in gold and silver and put it in a special place, and that can help pay for your your final wishes. So if you don't have a burial plot, but you want to be buried in in the ground in a cemetery, go ahead and pay for that plot now. I mean, they're generally pretty inexpensive, unless you're being buried in New York or something. But who would really want that, really? So, burial plot, you can purchase those right now, and they're there for you forever. You could purchase several plots, so you have room for your family, for, your kids or whatever, whoever else may want to be buried there. And you actually own a deed to that property, to that 5 by 10 foot, piece of land that they put your coffin in, and your, and in case of cremation, your urn. So at any rate, gang, I don't want to dwell about this. I mean, what we've been through, in the last 10 days was awful. It was absolutely awful, because nothing was prepared for. And so we had to fly by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out. He had a lot of business going on at the time, and we can't figure any of that out. We're going off of, his friends and what his friends told him was going on with this and what was going on with that. Working on this tractor, working on this bulldozer, fixing up this pickup truck, who owed him money, and apparently there were a lot of folks that owed him money. We don't know anymore, and we can't figure it out. So on top of all of that, and they were coming by to pick up their vehicles that, had been worked on, but we don't know what to charge them. There was just nothing done in that regard. So that's the least of it. That's the least of it, because he may have paid for parts and everything. Another thing too is the credit card bills he left behind. Since he didn't have the cash, and we don't have access to easy cash, we're having to sell stuff as quickly as we can to pay for that, plus the medical bills that are coming in from the valiant attempts to keep him alive. So it's stressful. It's very stressful. What he left behind was stressful to deal with, and on top of which, it's just my wife and I really dealing with this, despite the fact there are 4 siblings, 4 surviving siblings, because they're not dealing with this very well, and they don't know what to do, and without my wife and I up there to give direction, they just don't do anything. They have a hard time dealing with death to begin with. Dealing with stuff apparently is a little bit much for them or something at this point. And but at any rate, I think you guys for the most part understand what I'm saying. I never script when I talk, so it may seem a little discombobulated, but the general thing, the general idea I wish to convey is basically to have a living will, number one, very important. Number 2, an executor for your estate. And number 3, have, a family member listed, or sign your titles for your vehicles and trailers and anything else, that your boat, whatever, anything that has a title on it, sign it. Even though it's still in your possession and you're keeping it at the bank in your safety deposit box, or you're keeping it in a safe somewhere in your house. Just sign it, and that way, if something happens to you, your family can immediately take possession of that property and sell it if they need to help pay for, whatever. Or just, to get rid of it during the process of getting rid of it, and also keeping the government's paws off of the wealth you've created during your lifetime. That's the last thing you want to do, is give, a lot of money to the government just because you chose not to deal with these issues when you were still alive. So basically signing titles, and then getting names on your accounts or on your property. For instance, the house that you live on, the property that comes with it, there's a title for that. And you can easily put your kid's name on that with very little cost. In fact, even doing a living will cost you nothing except for the notary. So you do a living will, you sign it in front of a notary, and the notary verifies that it was you that signed that document. And now it's a legal document. Same thing with a will. You don't have to involve an attorney. It becomes a legal document just by literally a notary signing it, saying this is my last will and testament, this is my living will, this is my executor. So you don't have to go through the court process. A court process may have to be gone through if it's contested to see if it's real, but that's about it. So you can save a lot of money just by doing these online documents, these templates you can download and then fill them out on your own and stuff like that. But my wife and I already had most of our stuff taken care of, believe it or not, when we were in our 20s. So, and that's a funny story in itself, but I'm not going to tell it right now. But we have, the life insurance. It's already done. Our final arrangements are already paid for. It's all paid for, and we did that in our 20s. In fact, the lady that sold it to us said that we were the youngest couple that ever bought a plan. So we have life insurance on top of our final will, our final wishes for our remains taken care of. It's all financially done. So I found out that was much more unusual than I had originally anticipated. And with Dennis, basically, Retha talked to him about getting a will done, and he said he would. He didn't. There was nothing. There was no executive. Who's the executor of the estate? Well, we have to assume, based on 2 conversations, that it's my wife. So we're making an assumption here at this point. 2 conversations, one with my wife and then one with a family friend that said also that my wife would be executor, but nothing left behind in paper. So if we start having arguments between the siblings, you guys know where it goes from there, Okay, I don't want to belabor the point here. And I've had a lot of thoughts about a lot of other things going on, but I am not up to date on the news at all. I've been out of circulation. I was even in a place where I couldn't get internet. So he lived way, way, way up north, near the border of Canada, in Minnesota and Canada. And the internet just doesn't work up there on the phones. So you can make phone calls, but that's about it. The internet simply doesn't work. So I couldn't look up anything. So that made it even more complicated for me, because I like to have coffee in the morning and look at the markets and look at the headlines. So it was a very different experience for me being away for that long, but I am back, and I just wanted to say this one thing. What are your final wishes? Does your family even know? And do you have it in writing? I don't want to be that guy, and get all preachy, but I'm dealing with it. My wife and I are dealing with it, and it is awful. Especially when you think about how much of this is going to go to the government, because he didn't plan, and he hated the government. He really hated the government, but apparently he hated thinking about, the fact he was mortal even more than he hated the government, apparently. So, okay, gang, that's all I have for you for now. Lots of ideas for more podcasts. I'll see what I can eke out. My time is somewhat limited right now because I have been away and I had a lot of calls for work. So I'm going to have to get back to work here. But you guys, thank you for hanging with Truth, Money, and Freedom. And I'm sorry that our videos are so sporadic. Our Discord is not very lively right now either, because I just can't get on it very often right now. I try to get on as often as I can, and we have others that are on there as well. Of course, if you're interested, please check out our Discord group. We'd love to have you. But that's about all I have for now. You guys all have a wonderful, wonderful day, and may God bless each and every one of you.